Welcome and thank you for having me today. I'd like to spend the next 30 minutes or so speaking to you about the jury system. I'd like to do it in sort of three broad areas. One, I'd like to just describe to you why I think the jury system as we practice it in Victoria is important. Secondly, I'd like to just talk to you a bit about how citizens become jurors. And thirdly, I'd like to just speak briefly about our expectations of citizens when they become jurors, and equally their expectations of us. One of the things I think that is really important about the system as it operates now is that we ask citizens to take up a civic responsibility, as a decision-making responsibility, in a very serious community event, predominantly a criminal, possible criminal activity, sometimes civil, but I'll leave that to the side. We asked 12 people to decide whether a person accused by the state of something is guilty or not guilty. And for me, I guess if I were accused of something that required me to go to trial and be judged, I kind of like the idea that I'd be judged by 12 people who are a cross-section of the community I live in and represent some of the values and some of the standards and expectations that I have. I should say to you, dispel anything you know of jury system if it's based on American TV, okay? Because that's not how it occurs in Victoria. I say that because you often hear this term, a jury of my peers. Not necessarily. It's a jury made up of a cross-section of the community. If I were accused of something, it would be unreasonable for me to expect that the 12 people in the box would be middle-aged, hockey-loving, beer-drinking Canadians. Those are my peers. But I could genuinely expect and reasonably expect that it would be, looking around here, it would be a cross-section of the community. People who are from Australia, people who are from other Commonwealth countries like I am, people from countries completely removed from the Commonwealth. Black, white, yellow, red, male, female, over 18 years old, and no upper limit. That's our community, and that's what you would expect if you were charged. The other bit about that then is that the jury system actually brings the community into the courtroom. So, anybody 18 in the room? Yeah, a few of you? You've got your name on the electoral roll? You got to do that before November, there's an election. Well, once you're on the electoral roll, we have access to your details. Well, we don't have access to your details. We ask the Electoral Commissioner to give us a randomly selected group of people, usually in the tens of thousands at a time. And we then send out eligibility questionnaires. So we don't really know where those questionnaires are going, to be honest. They could come to me, they could go to the Chief Justice, they could go to somebody in prison, they could go to somebody who's dead, they often go to people who are in old age homes. But once you have that questionnaire and you answer it, you may find yourself on a jury if you are eligible, which there is some eligibility criteria. Most of that's just around your occupation. So if you're in the criminal justice system, a police officer or a prison officer or those sort of things, well, you're out. But pretty well everybody else is in. As long as you don't have a criminal record, and there's even varying degrees of that. 2 years for less serious stuff, 5 years, 10 years for very serious stuff. So, as long as you've kept a good and law-abiding existence, and then as long as you're available, because we acknowledge that people aren't always available. But once we have all that, we've got a group of people, a cross-section of the community, to come in and serve on a jury. It's not just the cross-section. It's actually dispersing the decision-making, taking it out of the hand of one person, a judge, who could make a good decision, and often do, but putting it in the hands of 12 people. We often have jurors come in and say, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be responsible for the decision. And we say, you don't have to be. You've got to listen to the evidence without bias, listen to it carefully, weigh it up, assess it reasonably, and tell us what you think. And by the way, you're not making the decision on your own. The other 11 have to have the same answer as you came up with. So the decision making is dispersed amongst 12, and the decision isn't just held by one person. I think the other thing that is important about jury service, and I'm going to probably trip and fall flat on my face, so no applause when I do that, but the other thing that I think that it's really important is that it provides a uniform approach to jury service, so that if you were charged with something in Melbourne, or if you were charged with something in Shepparton, you could have a reasonable expectation that you would be treated the same. You're not going to be, your matters won't be heard by a city judge or a county judge, a country judge, a regional judge. The other thing as well is having, the other value I think in the jury system as it currently is that it allows us to look at the system as a whole and make improvements along the way. It gives us an opportunity to ask citizens, what do you think? We do that every year. We ask citizens, both those that come into the jury's office across the state and are selected on a panel, and on a jury, and those who aren't. What's remarkable about that, and you can ask this question in any jurisdiction in any country, those that go through the system entirely, those who get a questionnaire, then a summons, then come to court, and then find themselves on a jury and get to a decision, they think far more highly of the system. They have a stronger appreciation of the system. They have, dare I say, a stronger respect for the system than those people who don't. Either never have been in jury system, been called for jury service, or those who we call, I really am going to go right on, you guys might want to move backwards, it'll be ugly. Those who are called for jury service and we waste their time, because you can imagine some days in Melbourne, our jury pool room is as big as this. We have as many seats. We often have as many people who are sitting right here. And you can imagine that, because we expect that 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 trials are starting that day. Well, on the days when it doesn't go to the way we expect, and we send, 150, 200 people home with a $40 check, and they never even got into a courtroom, you can bet that they're not our champions, out in the community. They're not our ambassadors. They'll be out there saying, what a waste of time. The government's crazy, the system's crazy. But those who actually go through the system have a far better appreciation of it. And all I can say about that is, don't believe everything you see in a newspaper, hear on a TV report, or read on the internet. Journalists are obliged to give you the minimal information, for column width and column space, and they tend to leave out some of the important stuff and just put in some of the sexy headlines. Just an aside on that, one of the studies that have been done in the University of Tasmania are with jurors on sentencing. What they found was that the jurors who actually sat on a trial and delivered a verdict, a guilty verdict, and then were told when they were asked about what sentence do you think that person should have, they generally fell on about where the judge actually sentenced, or even a little bit lower.